Welcome to the third season of the Ashlars podcast. We are thrilled about our progress and, more importantly, grateful for your support and encouragement. We are going in strong with ever more energy and passion into the third season of our humble little initiative. That is, to show the true light of Freemasonry by being India's first and only podcast on Freemasonry. In this season, we continue to highlight papers by Indian Masons and showcase the wealth of Masonic knowledge and wisdom in India. Additionally, we will also shine some light on various other degrees beyond the craft, with a view to help Masons discover the true joy of being a Mason and expand their horizons. As a disclaimer, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely of the participants and do not represent any official positions, including those of any Grand Lords or constituents thereof. Best efforts have been made to keep the conversation on the level for brethren and non-Masons alike.
You can't really think of any of these side degrees. So that is the basic prerequisite. So anyone who, especially among Masons, who is thinking that, oh, degree number is extremely important. No, sir. Degree number is not important. What degree you're into, what have you learned from that? And most importantly, how are you even applying that to your life? That is the important thing. The number can be ABCD for all I care.
I can become the grandmaster of, or maybe the supreme grandmaster, God knows, whatever names you want to add,
or 33rd degree,
supreme ruler of the universe. 33rd degree.
That's another fascination people seem to have.
Exactly. If I can't understand what Freemasonry or that degree does and degree teaches and not implement that, you are worse than the first person who, no, I can't say worse. Even the person outside also will be smarter than you. I genuinely feel.
I mean,
a Cohen would be a better person than you. I'm absolutely sure about that.
Yeah. So the basic thing that we're trying to say is, let's not get into the degree numbers or whatever. Rather, let's worry about, okay, what have I got from Masonry? What have I applied from Masonry? And how is that improving not just me, but even the community around me? Like, the point is making good men better. So have you transitioned to better from being good?
That's true. Because as you said, right? But as you said in English and Indian, right? Like especially in English, they just straight away said the craft and Holy Royal Arch kind of go together. And there was a reason for it. And anybody who has ever read or heard some of our previous episode, there was a bit of a confusion between who is actually following that old traditional style and everything. And when that reconciliation happened, so forget the fight, but when the reconciliation happened between two different groups and they said, you know what is more important? What is important is the future of Freemasonry. Your ego and my ego can be just sitting over there in a nice, good designer was at the cornerstone or somewhere, whatever you want to keep. You can keep a big picture of yourself and say, oh, I'm the best. But after me, what happens? Nothing. Nobody cares. Nobody is going to care about it.
Okay? Ego has never served humanity if you look at the past.
Exactly. And the best part is we don't even care about looking at the past. That's the worst part of it. In all these
don't learn from mistakes.
The worst thing of it. And we kind of never bother to learn of it. But the moment when the reconciliation happened and people who had that kind of ego just like, you know what, chuck it. And I'm proud about that reconciliation because luckily it were the two brothers who came together and say, you understand your point, I understand my point, let's come together. Simple. Then that reconciliation brought a kind of an order to it. It has its own variations to that one, but it actually brought to that order. And during that order is when that craft and Holy Royal chapter in England actually went together. But that was not the problem in Scottish and Irish. That is why they both continued living in their own way. Yes, chapter in most cases was still governed by the craft lodges. It was the craft lodges who, like for example, some students actually come and say, sir, this is a very beautiful topic which you have read, but I've got an additional stuff to be added into this. Can you think about this one? So, and just imagine if you get an additional topic to which enhances the overall idea, right? That's when like, okay, you know what? I kind of like this. It kind of helps you in understanding a bit more. Why not? And by the way, I'm pretty sure and I can give it to you in what you call plain writing as well, and as well as many researchers and scholars. Even if the what should I say, the feeling, or rather, even if that zeal was there for some of these folks that, oh, if I learn this, if I do this, I might get more degree, I might get to wear some fancy new costume or some stuff and all. It was not the same for all of the others. That is pure straightforward information. Okay, it was never the same for others. For others, at least for some of them, it was the learning and the teachings which were in. See, somebody can start a new style, but why does other follow? Not because just the style, because they like it. And that liking is something which is where the concentration happened. So that's why Scottish and Irish, as per my understanding, actually continued having that style. So they have a Grand Lodge of Scotland, Grand Lodge of Ireland, and they take care of their respective 3 degrees. Post that, whatever anything is happening, they have their own governing body. The reason is very simple. Government of India cannot dictate terms to somebody from another country, because the culture, the variation, everything is different. We all can say we are all Africans. Why? Because out of Africa theory. But today we are having a different style to it. Otherwise, everybody can come up and say, oh, Africa is the only important point. We should all follow whatever rules. That doesn't happen, right? We grew. We kind of added value to and added certain things to it. And that is why each of these governing bodies continue. UGLE has its own set. It has a Supreme Grand Chapter. It kind of still attaches itself to the the United Grand Lodge of England. Grand Lodge of Scotland, Grand Lodge of Ireland, they've not done that. They have a very good understanding with each other. And that is the most important point, rather than you come, oh, you should adhere to my rules, you should follow nothing. What was most important was that handshake, which was important. I think that also, remember there is a paper which you and I spoke about, handshake by me, which I had written once upon second season.
Yes,
Why
second
was that
season.
handshake important? Yeah, handshake. Why was it important? Because it gave that kind of that 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 confidence
Mutual
which you had,
understanding.
the trust, mutual understanding, the trust
Yes,
which you had
yes.
with each other. That is what was important. It was not about, oh, whose shirt size is bigger than me.
So let me add one more thing to this. So I've heard that the Irish Royal Arch even has mark masonry in it. And how does that sort of integrate with craft masonry?
Right. So see, when we started talking about the other degrees, right, especially season 3, we started with chapter. Then we moved into mark, and then we obviously spoke about Royal Arc Mariners. Now, the idea was mark was actually separate. As I said, in English, obviously, mark was separate. Chapter was still part of UGLE's overall idea that craft and chapter goes together, but mark was still kept it separate with its own governing body, RAM being another, with its own governing body kind of stuff. Well, in England, mark and RAM used to go together. But in Irish, it is very interesting. So, an Irish Freemasons' first encounter with the Royal Arch chapter is in a lodge of Mark Master Masons. And Mark Master Mason is connected, not moved, not like the way Mark and RAM is moved, the way we were talking. But here, Mark is part of your chapter. You enter in this chapter by becoming a Mark Master Mason. Now, all those who have heard the story of Mark Master Mason, and this is interesting, luckily for us, English, Scottish, and Irish have the same storyline to it. Scottish has more other stuff added to it, which we will anyway cover in our future episodes. See, the newly made Mark Master Mason, once he goes through the degree, is then fully qualified to become a Royal Archmason. The Mark Master Mason degree expands on, obviously, the Masonic duty of fellowship and benevolence, which we spoke about in the story itself. And that, by the way, that is in English and Indian, right? It is an extension of you being a fellow craft. You actually join as a fellow craft person who understands certain concepts and then move forward to it, right? So while the Royal Arch degree in Irish contains impressive content and continues the legend, which is continued in the Master Mason degree. So Master Mason degree, the third degree, has certain things, and we are trying to figure that out. And when we are trying to figure that out, we go through the Mark Master Mason degree. By the way, please do not consider them as separate degrees. Again, as I said, they are not different numbering system and all. Oh, that means the Mark Master is fourth in Irish, then finally chapter is fifth. Please, let's not go into numbers. That number comes in a completely different, what should I say, Masonic order, and there is a reason for that number as well. It actually has a significance. It's not just a simple hierarchical structure, which you say. The interesting part was it was not until 1844 that the Grand Chapter took McMaster degree under its control. So just imagine, at one point of time, they too were separate, right? And then obviously, assuming two smart folks sat and discussed about it, like you and me, I would say, okay, just a small tap on ourselves. But no, okay, jokes apart. But there were certain folks who would have thought of understanding these things. As I said, if there were only 2 degrees at one point of time, which became 3 degrees in craft, what stops them from bringing this here and there? And there would have been a very good reason for it. It doesn't change like this. Obviously, there was a discussion on that. So today, what is happening? The Mark Master degree is the precursor to your Royal Arch degree. By the way, the workings are, as I said, are similar to what we find in English and Scottish. Before 1829, this is what I read about. Many of the craft lodges used to give the Royal Arch degree under the same craft warrant. See, this could also be one of the reason, right? Because in 1813, when the reconciliation happened between Premier Grand Lodge and Ancient Grand Lodge, or Modern and Ancient, which we used to say, they kind of came together. And there were still some lodges. Obviously, this is the 1800. What else will you get time to do? So you will obviously, the information would not have flown that easily to everybody. It would have taken time. So some of the craft lodges continued doing that. But in Irish, the best part is it was around 1856 when the last lodge stopped this practice, and they have a separate chapter created who can give that degree work. Otherwise, it was always the craft which used to do the degree work. The interesting part is the relationship between craft, which you asked, right, is very similar. Mark and Royal Arch is actually harmonious and, what should I say, integrated with the craft degree. Mark degree is seen as a step, a preparatory step towards the Royal Arch, which is often considered as the completion, natural completion of the Masonic journey initiated in craft lodges. Maybe that is one of the reasons when Grand Lodge of India said that, okay, you know what, Mark also can actually be part of ours. They kind of pulled out the idea from here and there, like a good masala, Indian masala, which we wanted to create. But it's a good masala for us, right? Like we had craft, the head of the craft also becomes head of the chapter. Even the deputy and everything kind of just matches with each other. But in the mark, the head of the grand is definitely the head of the mark, but the deputy is not the same. There is something different happening there. So that kind of showcases how that Lego block was built to create that mansion, the castle, whatever they wanted to do.
One other way of looking at it is that, I mean, those Masons who have gone through all the degrees will understand this even better. But there is definitely a common thread, or rather, like a sort of continuity to the entire story,
Yes.
right? Now, imagine doing this in one setting. It would be practically impossible, right? So it makes sense to sort of, chunk it up into different degrees and sort of confer it. And then sort of put it in such an order that once you are a master mason, which means you have gone through the fellowcraft degree, then mark will suddenly make sense to you, right?
Yes.
And then chapter will
Yes.
suddenly make sense to you. So that it's a chronological thing. It's not a number
To
thing.
understand the history of it.
Exactly. Otherwise, it is way too much to do the whole thing in one sitting. And like we just said in the beginning of our episode, right? We'd rather give out something that we are proud of rather than do a rush job and then think that this was not a good idea. So I think that's probably how it may have gone. But let me ask you another one thing, Dinesh. So how did this degree come to be today? Although we are speculating on what could be the thing, but I think in particular there are some three major time frames or periods which is involved with this, right? So yeah, let's talk about that.
So I came across a paper by excellent companion James Penny. This is a paper called the Royal Arch Chapter and its place in the development of Irish Freemasonry. And I'm going to quote some of these pointers from this paper. So there were 3 different periods which we have been talking about. The first one is, oh, by the way, very interesting point, which I completely forgot. The Grand Lodge of Ireland is actually celebrating their 300th years of existence. This was back in 1725 when the Grand Lodge of Ireland came into existence. So now coming from there, the constitution of the Grand Lodge of Ireland, I think one of them was written by a person called Pennell, and it was somewhere in 1730. So where they spoke about 3 grades. Now this, as I said, I'm going to quote from this. So the first period talks about this being having just 3 degrees. So first was called apprentice or brother, fellow craft, and master's part, or not confined to the chair, by the way, just master's part is written. So that is panel agreeing that our present entered apprentice and fellow craft and his fellow craft with our current master mason degree were all part of that degree work which was supposed to happen by them. Now, Pennell's master's part, which he mentioned, comprises the essentials of a ceremony subsequently elaborated into our installed master's degree. R in the sense, when I'm saying R, I'm reading it from the paper. So in R in the sense is Irish. The Royal Arch, then there is the Red Cross Mason degree, perhaps better known to Scottish and English Mason as the Red Cross of Babylon or the Red Cross Knight or Babylonish Pass. All these gonna sound very confusing to you, but don't worry. We are going to cover each and every one of them in our future episodes because they are amazing orders and degrees into this one. Now, then came the second period. So when the Royal Arch kind of grew in importance in Ireland, these degrees, which we were talking, the names kind of started changing. So these changes were first noted in Dublin between 1750 to 60, slightly later in some of the rural areas over there. But the names of the degrees now came as entered apprentice and fellow craft. I don't know why the number 1 and then entered apprentice and fellow craft. More usually referred to as entered and crafted. That's the word which they use. Second became master mason, and then third became Royal Arch. So suddenly Royal Arch came into this place. Now we still have a system of 3 degrees. Only Pennell's apprentice, which back in 1730, which was it, became known as by a composite name. He started his fellow craft, having lost its former significance, ceased to represent a specific degree. So it became part of entered and crafted, like apprentice and fellow craft became one. The name only was joined to the first degree merely to preserve it from becoming extinct. Now just imagine somebody thought, oh my goodness, something is going to happen, it's going to get lost, so let me just ensure that I continue following it. And that's exactly what they did. Then fellow craft was re-christianed the master mason, and while the third, the master's part, was re-christianed as Royal Arch. Now the purport of this degree, which in Ireland is called the installed master degree, must have been a portion only mentioned as part of Pennell's master part in 1630. Now let's not confuse everybody. Now, this is the part which is kind of merging the ceremony to become the Royal Arch. You remember the ancients in England, which so that entire story of moderns and ancients and everything. If you read more, you will understand that the ancients in England at one point refused to confer the Royal Arch upon any mason who had not previously been installed as a master. So today, Shishir, you have gone through the Royal Arch degree, but you didn't have to become a master in a craft. But at one point, it was very important. That is where I think there was some other conjuring which would have happened, wherein they kind of allowed something to do, and there is a nice good paper also in that. I'll try to figure it out whether it's possible to get that one. Then comes the third period. Now, this is the period when their deputy grand secretary, who was Right Worshipful Brother John Fowler, who kind of used to call himself the custodian of these stuff. So he got a bit of a grouping. Now, I'm reading it again from this. According to the author, he said that the Irish degree and the major grouping which came in back in 1840 is entered apprentice, fellow craft, master mason. So all three in one line. Then came past master excellent mason with super excellent mason, arch mason, and royal arch mason. Very confusing. I don't even know what's the difference between it. And it's something which I really think I need to read. Then came arc mason, which is the Royal Arc Mariners kind, mark fellow mason, mark mason, link mason, Babylonian pass, Jordan pass, royal order, and then finally high knight templar.
That's a lot of masons, man.
A lot of masons. And they all had interesting stories. I'm pretty sure of that. They all had interesting stories. Everything was there. But I think by the end, by the time it, what should I say, understood everything and all, they kind of just merged it all together.
That's all, folks. We sincerely hope that you liked our episode and got a glimpse into the fascinating world of Freemasonry. If you have any queries about what we have shared on the podcast or about Freemasonry in general, please check out the show notes for links to the Grand Lodge of India's website, or write us an email, which is theashlarspodcast@gmail.com.